we're so excited to be hosting this panel today about health stories. You're going to hear a lot about health during Climate Week. I hope there's been a lot of other content about health during Climate Week, but we're going to talk about health stories. And I could not have a more exciting panel to come and join me. I'm going to ask them to come up and you give them a big cheer, and then I'm going to introduce them once they're up here. So come on, panel. Woo! Come on, we can do better than that. Woo! Woo, 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 woo! Can I also say that I feel like an amazing splash of green amongst what is like a super cool, absolutely like, yes, darling, we are all talking about storytelling. We're wearing black and grey. I think Charlie's got a splash of pink down there. So, oh, and also the fabulous shoes.
We're not a cult, I promise.
We're not a cult of health. And also you match our chairs. So I've got this incredible panel in front of me. I've got Fiona, the brand director at Bupa. I've got Dan, the executive creative director at Redwood at AMV. I've got Alice Adey, filmmaker, climate advocate, and one of my sheroes at Earthrise. I've got Aman, global director for sustainability communications at Kenvu, who also we used to work together. And very wonderfully, because we had some issues, some health issues, in fact, with another speaker, we have Charlie, who's the SVP Global Development at National Geographic Channel. And I think we've got brands, we've got creatives, we've got advertisers, we've got social media creatives, we've got the perfect panel to have this conversation about that intersection between health, planet, and storytelling. Because a lot of people here at Climate Week, they can tell you any number of facts about the intersection between health and climate, but the power of storytelling to bring those two things together and to actually be able to wake us up to some of what's happening is just so powerful. Now, Fiona,
yes,
you have helped us pull this panel together, and we're immensely grateful for Bupa's support. Could you tell me perhaps a bit more about Bupa for this audience, which would be great, and perhaps talk us a little bit around, as a company that works in human health, how are you seeing that relate to planetary health?
Absolutely. So Bupa is one of the largest healthcare companies in the world. I think in the States, maybe less known, but most of the rest of the world, very well known. And we take care of health from digital innovation all the way through to health insurance. We're in hospitals and dentists, and we really see health as holistic. And we see the planet's health as very much part of the health story. And I think sometimes if you don't think about that, that can feel quite like, oh, really? But we realize that the narrative around the planet's health has been very doom and gloom. It's been very factual. It's been very much, everything that's going wrong. All the stories about what you shouldn't do, how you should stop doing that and stop doing this and stop doing other things. And however, on the other hand, we know that when it comes to health and people's health, there's just an exponential growth in the number of people who want to be healthier, who want to prevent bad health. And so there's this desire to be healthier. And when you then tie the planet's health story into that same story, it becomes really powerful. All of a sudden, the story is not about what you shouldn't do. It's about all these things that you could do and should do that are good for your health and the health of the planet. Tiny steps that you can take that change things. We've done a huge amount of work on highlighting how we can make cities healthier, because we know 50% of the population and growing lives in cities. And we have been running at Bupa for about 3 or 4 years, an amazing program of work that does all sorts of things to make cities healthier. But when we delivered what we did in a really factual way, no one got it. Just sort of wasn't engaging. When we turned that on its head and started to tell stories, shine lights on amazing innovations, people who are doing beautiful, tiny things that you could blow up and make huge, all of a sudden you feel inspired. No longer is it about gloom, and it's about inspiration. So I think it might be a nice idea to show the Healthy Cities trailer. And this really is a trailer, so I would say go and watch it, because kind of it doesn't do what I'm talking about, because it's going to entice you to go and watch it. But behind this is all these beautiful stories of innovation and things that people are doing around the world to help our health and the planet's health.
Let's play the trailer.
What is a healthy and sustainable city? Healthy for whom?
You cannot have healthy people in a sick place.
It makes no sense if you are helping people get better and then putting them back out into the environment that made them sick in the first place.
We are part of nature. We are not something else.
And I really believe on being on the right side of history.
We all need to work together to support people's health in a changing climate.
There's so much we can do.
If we don't do something radically different now, we will lose our chance to do anything.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's just the start. I think we did this and it showed us the engagement that you could start to get. And from there, we've kicked off all sorts of exciting projects, which we can talk about later. Some new projects with Alice, which really all center on how we take stories and put them at the heart of everything we do.
I love that. And you're going to have to do a video of my dad for your healthy stories, because my dad is a working man. He was a builder out all through his life. When he retired, he continued to eat the way that he used to eat when he was a builder, which usually was a giant slab of meat or sausages or lamb every evening with some vegetables on the side. And his heart got worse, etc. And then he read a book that I wrote and decided that he was going to cut down on his meat in the evenings. And I was like, oh, that's so lovely, Dad, thanks so much. And 6 months after he stopped, he turned around and he goes, Sol, he's the only person allowed to call me Sol. If you'd told me years ago that I was going to get a good night's sleep if I didn't eat so much meat in the evenings, I'd have done it ages ago. And I'm sitting there going, my job is sustainability communications, and I didn't tell my dad about the benefits to him. I told him about the impact on climate change. I told him about what was happening in terms of the Amazon. I told him all of the reasons why he needs to eat less meat because of climate, which eventually convinced him because he's a loving father. But actually the fact that he got a solid 8 hours, which he'd never had in his life, was what convinced him.
That's the point.
That connection,
yes.
That connection, those health stories. So, Alice, we saw a flick of you up there on the screen, I think, for a second as we went past. But, Alice, through your work with Earthrise, you have a huge platform and a lot of people that you talk to through social media, through Instagram, through your YouTube channel. You're a very recognised name. And you have really focused on health in some of the ways in which you've tried to make that case. Like, what do you wish we were able to tell more people about in terms of this story?
Well, honestly, I don't think that we had enough. You know, I think I started off as a photojournalist, really telling stories through photography, focused on the refugee crisis and forced migration. I then turned my lens to climate stories, really with a focus on human stories. That was always the aim, was to document climate frontlines. But when I started Earthrise 5 years ago, that remained the focus. And really, if I think about the stories that we've told, it's really been focused on telling stories of climate justice, so putting humans at the center of the story. We loved, you know, my enduring hero, Sir David Attenborough, but often the human story was absent. He now does it more and more. But that really important intersection, that connection that you talk about of putting humans at the center, it's not just a nature problem, it's not just a biodiversity problem, but it's one of social justice, became, you know, our absolute focus. I think after many years of banging that drum, and in some ways, you know, if I think about the stories we've told, metaphorically shouting about the problem, sounding the alarm, now I think it's about finding different levers and different ways into telling the story. And increasingly, I think health is a brilliant one to do it. I think another one is the human nature frontier. We are a part of nature and not separate from it. And so I am definitely starting to shift my lens. You know this better than anyone, Solly. How do we find new storytelling and creative ways to engage people with this issue? Because a lot of the strategies that we've used haven't worked in the way that we wanted them to. I think it's a humbling moment, more important maybe than ever, to find the ways that we can talk about climate that bring people from different sides of the political aisle together, because I think this issue has also become more politicized than it ever has. So health, to me, is really exciting. And it's also kind of a win-win, you know? The way that we're living is making us and our planet sick. So I love that anecdote about your dad, the story about your dad. You can, if you get people to understand the level of connection, there's no sacrifice. And as Fiona said, so much of this conversation has involved an incredible amount of sacrifice. So we're in storytelling to illuminate those connections, and I think the sort of personal planetary health connection is a really, really brilliant one.
I think one of the ways you do that so powerfully is you talk about yourself as well and how this has affected you. I think quite a lot of the time in sustainability, we tell people why they should care. We tell them why this should matter to them. We tell them about why they should be doing more. And we don't tell them, this is why I care as an individual. This is why this matters to me. This is why this matters to my health. And you've done that so powerfully in your content.
Well, and I think it just speaks to the tonality of our work as well. I'm really realizing, you know, I think, again, fear is not the motivating factor that we perhaps once thought, and a lot of people in the movement have been using, and certainly I had too. I think finding stories that are inspiring, that are hopeful, is really the way to go. And that can sound cliche, but I really don't think it is. I mean, I would love to show a clip from a film that we made around oceans. It is called Ocean on Fire. The film is less depressing than the name implies. But that was during a coral bleaching episode last year. I had no idea how interconnected ocean health was with our personal health. That was honestly illuminating to me. But we went to document this incredible group called the Coral Gardeners, who are replanting corals. And I love the clip, I love the film, because it also, to me, represents what I love to do, which is to lean on all the tools and the level of craft that might be used, you know, in Dan's work, in advertising, in commercials, to real storytelling in a documentary format. To me, that's the name of the game. If we can take those tools, and you know, we have someone from Nat Geo here, that level and quality of storytelling is also how we move people to engage. So,
can we see that clip? Have we?
I hope so.
Did we get that clip?
Yeah. Yes. No sound.
The corals are going white overnight because the temperatures of the oceans are too high. The only way to save them is to plant resilient ones. We are the protectors of the oceans. The island brothers and sisters, they are becoming the new heroes. Bon, t'as vu tout ce qu'on a fait?
On a fait du chemin, mais il nous en reste encore beaucoup de distance à parcourir.
It just makes me want to give everything I have. Il y a beaucoup de gens qui comptent sur nous aujourd'hui. Pas perdre, on ne peut pas abandonner. The ocean needs a big victory. But I could lose my life's work overnight.
If we don't stop the fire.
Yeah. Oh, feeling a bit emotional. Oh, that got me welling up at the end. That's an amazing piece of work. And I know we have more people we need to ask questions, but just what's so powerful about that is it's putting people and the environment in one story. So often I think that we separate them out. So I just think that's so powerful to see the people in the spaces.
Yes, and It feels more important than ever just to be celebrating the potential of humans at their best when, we're being given a lot of reasons to have less faith in humanity, but there are so many incredible people dedicating their lives to fixing this.
Which again is one of the things which we all remember when we come to Climate Week, is that we're not alone. This is part of a giant community. Charlie, can I come to you? Yep. So I'm going to continue with my Solly's dad anecdotes, because when I was 15 years old, and again, my dad, working man, not a lot of money to spare in the household, but he invested in buying his first daughter a National Geographic subscription. And over the year, that subscription has transformed from a giant pile of magazines that I kept beside my bed to a TV channel, which is much more convenient. But that power of storytelling, the work that National Geographic has done literally for generations and now continues to engage generations more. Could you just talk a little bit around complexity and like the power of storytelling to help us engage with some of the complexity of these health and climate story questions?
100%, absolutely. And I'm really proud to work at National Geographic and to develop content and make content for lots of reasons. But one of the reasons is we have a direct tie to the National Geographic Society. They give grants, they're science-based, it's factual. That means all of our content is factual and true, and you can take it to the bank if you see it or you read it or you hear it on National Geographic. And another reason I'm really proud is kind of what you mentioned, is our ability to amplify our storytelling across all genres, contemporary history, ancient history, natural history, culture, but especially right now, health and wellness is having a moment, let me tell you, across all of our platforms. Our reach is kind of amazing, and I'll get to that in a second, but it hasn't always had, we haven't always had this kind of reach. So if you just time travel for a second, let's go 1888, Washington, D.C., the society is formed. September 22nd, 1888, almost exactly 137 years ago. It would have been 137 years ago on Monday. Oh, wow. The first issue of the magazine was published, 50 cents on the cover, and it was distributed to a few dozen of the initial subscribers, the initial members of the National Geographic Society. So remember that, a few dozen. So then, in 1905, photographs started showing up in the magazine, and it wasn't until 1910 that the yellow border appeared that we're so famous for now. And so over the next 115 years, bringing us up to date, grants kept being given by the Society, stories kept being told, and eventually, as you're saying, the channel came into being. We're part of Disney Plus, books, kids' books, social, digital, YouTube, podcasts, everything. Our tentacles expanded and grew, and the power of National Geographic spread around the world. So let me just show you where we are today. From a few dozen issues of this magazine, now we are 137 years later, 490 million subscribers on linear and streaming, 25 million on YouTube subscribers. This is my favorite one, 784 million across social media, the largest brand in the world. And the appetite for health and science is sort of, it's insatiable on this platform. We had 1.8 billion impressions in just the first 8 months alone. It outperforms every other vertical we have. And then 72 million readers across print and digital. So the several dozen magazine has turned just on the, if you want to read it and not watch it, 72 million. And 9 million people over the past year have visited Nat Geo to read a piece of health-related content. And on top of that, a majority of our new digital subscribers see an article they want to read about health and wellness, and they subscribe so they can read that health and wellness article. This topic is our viewers just eat this up, and they're younger and more female than our usual demographic. So we're starting to establish ourselves as a real home for health and wellness content. And then the famous magazine, if you get it this month, it's another great issue. There's an article called How to Start Aging Like an Athlete. It's average Joes and Josephines, but also professional athletes all talking about how they're living older, stronger, and better. And we all work hand in hand for our big projects across all these platforms. And where my role comes in across the long-form storytelling for Disney Plus and for linear and for Hulu is to develop shows that sort of three characteristics: creative and cinematic excellence. That's two, but we'll count it as one. Creative and cinematic excellence, factual accuracy, and to be surprising. And there's a show right now that's out called Limitless, Live Better Now. Great partnership with Bupa, thank you. which is really exciting. It features Chris Hemsworth going around the world, meeting with experts and scientists to learn how to maximize things like brain power, how you can boost your cognition, things like risk and resilience, that going outside your comfort zone has massive advantages, and then pain management. So we have a short little trailer to hear, but this is surprising that we've got this A-list star who is he's so vulnerable and curious, and he goes around the world gathering this information for our benefit so we can live better the next morning when we wake up. Could you please roll the trailer?
Ladies and gentlemen, will you make some noise for Chris Hemsworth?
The moment I walk out and see how big that arena is, I'm starting to think, I've got to get out of here. I've always worked very hard on my physical fitness, but I'm realizing that I need to put as much work in for my brain as I do for my body. I'm diving headfirst into cutting-edge science to uncover 3 secrets to living better. We've got a lot of work to do.
One of the best ways to boost your brain is to learn a new skill.
You should learn the drums to play a song with me on my stadium tour.
Oh, God, okay.
I think this actually might be the most difficult thing you do.
Yeah, it's... I'm struggling. I think we all want the solution to not feeling any pain. It's gonna suck.
Being in the moment gives you the best chance to move through it.
The key to unlocking these benefits for all of us is finding the edge of our comfort zone. I looked down and I immediately get that wave of, like, terror. But it's up here. The growth that occurs through any challenging experience is quite powerful. And it's really what we see.
Keep going, Chris. You can do this. Look at me. Look at my eyes. Say Jenga. It's not even that bad. I'm fine.
That was awesome.
Thank you. Really proud of that. And again, it seems surprising. So this is Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor in the Marvel Universe, if you follow along. And he's so vulnerable, and he's exposing his weaknesses. And the first episode, drumming, when he plays in a concert, it's magical how it all comes together, because he's not perfect. We're not perfect. He can show you how to overcome imperfections. And it's really inspiring. So we want to deliver information and inspiration through our content, and then we blow it out across platforms the way nobody can. None of our streaming competitors can do that. Nobody can do it the way National Geographic can. So to wrap up, we love to tell great stories, and we're very blessed to have this amplification model, this system to get it out there to anybody, anywhere, when they want it, on any device that they want it. So that's important for the health and wellness message, to make sure people can access the goodies.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Shelley. I just want a quick follow-up question, because those numbers you're just sharing there of how much incredible demand there is for health and wellness content, like this exploding demand for health and wellness content, I think is completely understandable in the world that we live in. But all of us in the audience who work in sustainability, in climate or nature, we're salivating at those numbers of going, oh, could I have like 10% of those numbers who want to consume content about climate change? And then I see Chris Hemsworth with his shirt off and go, maybe we're missing some of the key aspects of health storytelling. I can't believe I just said that on stage during Climate Week. But anyway, hi, Chris. So Charlie, seriously, I'm not distracted at all. Seriously.
Solly, are you sure you were salivating at the numbers?
How can we start putting together some of that huge interest that there is in health with what we know is this really genuine impact on health from sustainability and from climate, and the way that those two things intersect? Could you build on that a little bit for me?
Sure. We have a sort of a portfolio of content, as I mentioned, a lot of the genres, and different shows sort of emphasize different parts of either the health or wellness journey, or just a general better understanding of our planet, of culture, of history. So it's sort of there's a show, I'll just point to another show, it's called Ocean with Sir David Attenborough. Yes, which is phenomenal, tremendous. I had nothing to do with it. I wish I did. I wish I could take some credit, but my colleague Janet Vissering and my boss Tom McDonald are the ones who were shepherding that for Nat Geo. And if you haven't seen it, it's Sir David, who turned 99, I think, recently, and there's a great screening in London. And this is an impact film that there's an expression in your tape, Fiona. I think it said something like, humans can't be healthy in a sick world, or something like that. I'm going to tweak it. Humans can't be healthy with a sick ocean. And that's what this proved. If you watch the documentary, it's amazing. The ocean is amazing, sort of Act 1, if I'm going to break it down for you. Act 2 but it's getting sicker and sicker by the day because of what we're doing to it. But there is hope. And it comes back strong, and not being Pollyanna about it, but giving hard data as to these pockets of the ocean that are being protected. And that if we can protect these areas, they can sort of blossom, and they can spread the goodness and spread the healing. And we can still eat fish, whatever we want to do, if you want to do that. But we can protect the ocean and also get the nutrients we need out of it. So it's making sure each show in our portfolio sort of is additive to a larger message of helping the environment, helping people stay healthy, helping the planet stay healthy, and just carrying it. Another David Attenborough, I believe this is attributed to him, I believe it's true, but you need to fall in love with animals, the planet, before you can help them. So that's part of our job, is to make sure people fall in love with the world around us before it's too late.
I love the fact that on this panel we're talking about things such as falling in love, because this is the kind of conversation around storytelling that I think sometimes makes some of the other topics or platforms at Climate Week make people uncomfortable, when it's all sort of about business case and the science. Now, Dan, the work that you do, you're an agency, part of your job is to really understand what's going on with the consumer right now, what's going on in people's heads around this topic. So from the conversation we've just had, what kind of themes are you seeing emerging on this intersection between health and sustainability?
Well, I think people have always gravitated to stories. You know, we had hieroglyphics on rocks thousands of years ago, and that hasn't really changed. People want to be moved, they want to laugh, they want to cry. I want to see Chris Hemsworth with his top off, maybe. And I think that what's happening in the advertising and content industry at the moment is really interesting. It's a very disconcerting time, I think, for a lot of brands and for the advertising industry at large, because we're seeing a huge amount of change, proliferation of different media platforms and channels, huge fragmentation across the media landscape. Talking about magazines, I started out in magazines. The reason I don't work in magazines today is because not that many people buy them, and apart from Nat Geo. But I think the desire for stories hasn't gone away. Magazines change, and mobile phones come along, and social media comes along, and things are always evolving. And I think at this moment it's particularly interesting because we have AI, which is having a radical influence on the industry and the climate. Some positive, some negative. But AI is great at lots of things. It can create an image of my dog in a spaceship. It can maybe write you a limerick, but can it make the sort of human storytelling that Alice makes or that Bupa are making as a brand? No, absolutely not. And I don't think it ever will be able to, because human storytelling is about authenticity. Mm-hmm. It's about real people. It's about what's happening in our world today. Mm-hmm. So I think that the opportunity for brands and for advertisers is to think about a less traditional approach to storytelling. We've had, if you look at the last couple of decades, the pinnacle of storytelling from an agency point of view is, what does the 30-second ad look like? Yeah. And a 30-second ad may still have a role in that media ecosystem, but it's a smaller role. And I think that's not to say that television is dead, right? Advertising spend has gone from 50% to 10%, roughly, of brand spend over just over 10 years. But we still spend over half our time consuming content on TV screens. It's just how we consume it is different. Now we watch BVOD or SVOD or sometimes a bit of linear, but the reality is that we are still consuming long-form content more than ever before, really, and the type of work that's being made in the climate space, where you've got amazing long-form storytelling, and that can be in the planet health space, but also if you look at what Oatly are doing in Patagonia, there's some fantastic stuff being made, and there is an appetite for that. People are watching it. I think where it becomes interesting is brands taking a slightly more uncomfortable role within that. So rather than trying to create something where you have your brand stamp on it and it's very much kind of a polished piece of advertising, now it's about, well, how can we hand something over? So hand it over to the right filmmakers or to the right creators, and find those partnerships so that people can make the type of content that audiences are looking for. Because brands know now, a lot of brands know now, that you can't just, stuff down people's throats. They'll just switch off and go to a different screen. So it's that kind of two-way street that I think is the holy grail for what brands are trying to find right now. And there is some amazing stuff happening in this space. I think, the documentary industry, we talked about how challenging it is in terms of a lot of the funding. Brands have money. They can step in and they can support the funding of really important work. Yeah. So I think there's amazing opportunities and there's a lot of change. But, what I see at the moment is the brands that are sort of being brave are getting it right and are starting to have an impact in the climate space.
In fact, it's so exciting to hear you say that, because yesterday on this platform we launched a new report with the Sustainable Entertainment Alliance on exactly that, how brands and studios and creators can commercially come together to create more of that content. Because particularly when we're thinking about health, it kind of, as you said, it goes beyond some of the traditional advertising, that it's hard to do advertising around health, as I've discovered watching some American TV, where about 75% of the adverts are for health. Whereas storytelling about the reality of people's health and where it's first person. Just for a second, I want to throw a real curveball at you, Dan, and anyone else on the panel is able to pick up, and I'm going to come to Aman in a moment. But last night, I was having a great conversation with Anthony Leibovitz, who's the head of climate connections at Yale University. And he said that the biggest thing that he sees coming for sustainability in a good way, the biggest transformation he thinks is going to happen is ozemic. Because people's health is going to be transformed. Ozemic also has got these proven impacts on desire for other things. So people seem to be buying less crap and smoking less and feeling more control over their lives. And it seems to be generating a bit of a more sense of well-being in people, and thereby increasing concern for the wider world. Because one of the things which we already know is that when people feel more sense of well-being and agency in their own lives, when they feel in control of their own lives, they feel that there's more that they can do in the outside world. So one of the things which I just wanted to throw at you, and anyone else in the panel can pick up the ozemic point. This is the only panel in Climate Week when we were talking about the giant social transformation which is ozemic compared to AI, which everyone is talking about. How do you think brands can navigate this moment when so many people, particularly women who tend to be the consumers, are over the next 2 years going to change their sense of relationship to themselves and to the world around them as their health changes because of this very extraordinary drug? But I did not tell Dan I was going to ask.
What is ozemic? Ozemic. What is ozemic? Ozempic.
Yeah, Wegovy, Mounjaro.
Ozempic.
Ozempic.
Okay, got you. Ozempic. Just checking.
Sorry.
Spot the skinny girl.
The injection you stick in your ass that makes you lose weight.
Okay. No, I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page because I did not know what you meant.
So
okay.
As we see this fundamental transformation within the marketplace, particularly around women, do you think that this is going to have an impact on how we talk about health, where perhaps some of the basics of health are going to become much more about well-being and sense of self and maybe mental health rather than physical health, as we have these huge changes in people's health because of these new medicines?
Yeah, I mean, the healthcare industry is in a really interesting place at the moment. There's a huge amount of technological innovation that's happening both in the clinical space and also like some of the work that Bupa is doing. And there's a project that the brand's just launched recently around genome mapping, which is fascinating. You can take a whole new look at what preventative care looks like in the same way that we talk about preventative care for healthy cities, etc. And look, I'm not a clinical expert, so I'm not sure how much I can speak to Ozempic. I think that what I would say as a Brit in New York at the moment is that hope and optimism, in my opinion, will always triumph over fear and scaremongering. And I think, one of the things that I find difficult about a lot of sort of North American advertising and content is that it is built on that premise of fear. I think that the work that I'm most proud of is not playing into people's kind of, anxieties and tensions, but touching on emotions around love and hope. And, we just made a piece of work which has inspired some sustainability work, which is around health stories. And that's all around finding people who have these amazing health stories and, they may have never talked about these things before. And so what we try to do in the health space is create a platform for people to be able to talk to other people, to be able to get the clinical advice they need. I think there is a danger with a lot of new drugs and technology that, it's very easy to play on people's anxieties and fears and to advertise sort of, miracle pills. So I think we've got to be very careful, and healthcare companies have a responsibility to do that.
I do think, though, that what's interesting is that there's obviously a much greater focus on wellness and on prevention. And that's why this drug is interesting to people, because they want, the healthier we are, the better impact that has on our planet. Yeah. And so, in a way, if you're building a society of people who are not eating too much, who are healthy, who are not, coming into the health system, which we know has a big impact, we have a healthier society for all of us. And so I can see where he comes from, because, it's all connected. And we always talk about the fact that I think we forget as human beings that we're part of the ecosystem. We're not separate. We don't just live on this planet. We are completely connected. Yeah. And so this really changes the narrative, and I think there's an opportunity there.
And sorry for landing it on you, but it blew my mind to have the man whose entire job is listening to what the public is saying on climate say, I think this is going to be a game changer. But I want to come to you, because the work that Kenvu does is you probably touch so many lives every day with that everyday healthcare that you produce. I am a huge fan of your products. I use your products all the time, notably Tylenol. And it's just...
Sorry.
It's just... I literally took some, 10 minutes ago. It's so powerful, the conversation that you've been having about the intersection between planet, nature, and human health. And also, Man, you're one of the most fantastic sustainability communicators that I know. So tell me a little bit about how you're negotiating this, because some of these guys have got these great storytelling platforms. You're there every day in the cabinet above people's sink. How do you tell a health and sustainability story in that very everyday healthcare space?
Yeah, and thanks for having me, first of all. I think Kenvu has a unique opportunity. So for those who may not know Kenvu, I do not blame you. We are spun off from Johnson & Johnson 2 years ago. So we have the advantage of having this opportunity to be a startup with 20,000 people and iconic brands like Tylenol, but also Listerine, Aveeno, Johnson's Baby, Zyrtec, to really reimagine what that looks like, the connection between human health and environmental health, and how do we poke at it in a way that we can put product innovation behind it, we can put our entire sustainability mission around it, and even more so, take advantage of the trust consumers have put in us for Listerine is over 100 years old. So looking at kind of our brands, the brand value, the brand equity, and really thinking through where can we be a bigger part of culture, to some of the points made earlier, and where do we need to do a lot more? We are global. More than half our business is outside the US. We have some brands that are only available in Asia. So how do we kind of harness that power, even though we are now Kenvu and not J&J, and kind of really elevate all that up to make it more of a human story? And so I think that building off of three things you guys said, one of you mentioned optimism. Absolutely, right? We like taking care of ourselves. Longevity came up. People are increasingly connecting, investing in personal care with longevity. We released a report last month in August that did a survey in 10 markets around the world just to understand personal care routines. And we asked people, what's your routine like? What are some of the factors you think about when you're choosing your products? But also, how hard is it for you? Are you able to sustain it? What are some of the factors that are a barrier? And some of the things we heard are really interesting. 88% of people are saying across generations that they are investing in personal care because they think there's a health benefit. It's not just for beauty, it's a health benefit. And 65% of them are saying, please keep it simple and short, because then I can keep it consistent. Don't give me 10-step routines, because then you've lost me. And then there's some interesting data that's come out around generational differences. The younger generation is definitely looking for more wellness-oriented opportunities, holistic, let me do more with less, that takes care of me. And so for me as a sustainability communicator, I look at such a report and say, clearly the world is shifting to thinking about investing in themselves from a health perspective, much more so than I think we were even when I was growing up. How do we now connect them with, when you're taking care of yourself, you need to also take care of the planet, because one doesn't exist without the other. I think that's the next phase. How do we connect that conversation, again, through product innovation, but also through brand campaigns, etc.
And that connection to how do you take care of yourself and how do you take care of the planet at the same time. Could you talk you have this incredible insight in terms of, do people already get that? Do they understand the fact that there's an intersection between the planetary health and their health? You don't think they do?
I think in countries where it's at our doorstep. So in India, you talk to consumers. In Asia overall, we saw 56% of consumers telling us they're actually looking for the more sustainable option when they go to the shelf. That's way ahead of Europe and North America, way ahead by many percentage points. So there's something there. They're seeing it come right to their doorstep. I mean, I'm from Delhi, India originally. I went back last year after 6 years, and that's not the same country that I grew up in. Every single house of my family has an air purifier. Their car now comes with a built-in air purifier. We're living in a bubble. The pollution is so much. The skin, everything from skincare to how you take care of newborns, everything is shifting. So, as I said, the power there for our brands to do something really important and culture is vast. And population, we have billions to reach. So, I think we have an incredible opportunity to reimagine how we do health, consumer health, right? We have a second chance.
So let's dig into that just a little bit more, because can you say that statistic again? So this was in which part of the world there was the highest?
In Asia, 76% of people are looking for more sustainable solutions.
So this is what's so interesting, because I think so many of the panels and the platforms this week at Climate Week have been so dominated by the US perspective. And we're sitting in New York, fair enough. But many of us on this panel as well, we have a global audience, we have a global job. And that sense that actually in some parts of the world, there is this giant increase of interest. And do you think, Aman, that in some parts of the world that it's easier for people to put these two things together? That perhaps here in the US and elsewhere, that disconnect between health and sustainability, that you've got, we need to help the planet in a slightly top-down patriarchal way over here, and then my health is over here, and elsewhere in the world, those two things are felt as more connected. In your research, and just in your global experience, do you feel that there's more of a connection elsewhere?
I think at the precipice we evolve is very true here. I mean, again, looking at countries like Brazil and Indonesia and India, they have to deal with it today. They don't have time to wait. So the regulation is moving faster. The people power is moving faster. It's a very different space, I think, than we are in the US. We are certainly spoiled, I think there's a bigger disconnect here.
Yeah, I see Alice.
Well, I was actually just going to share the first.
Me too.
Were you thinking about the same thing?
Yeah.
When Fiona and I had met a few years ago, but reconnected about 18 months ago, met on a street in East London, and I guess it's a sign, not just geographical location, but the moment in your life, as I started to talk about fertility. And that link that I obviously a few years ago wouldn't have thought about. I'm 31 now, although actually beyond fertility, I think my biggest issue around fertility is going to be not having a boyfriend. But apart from that,
Helmut.
I'm now at a stage in my life when I'm thinking about that. What is the health of my fertility? How is planetary health impacting my fertility? I'm starting to talk about it with my friends. You know, it just speaks to that connection point again. Like, how do we get people to engage with this conversation and the deeply personal nature of those stories? It's an arrow to the heart. It's deeply moving and so personal. Rather than talking about systems, as I've done for so long, climate justice, this is so immediately personal, and we all have a stake in it.
And, and I think, you know, that's, Dan was talking about health stories, our campaign. It's all about that. Yeah. It's all about, you know, sharing something so that somebody else can understand. And that's, you know, we have just launched Planet Health Stories, and it's all about this topic, because I think for us, we see this link, but I don't think that you do see the link if you're just a normal person carrying on with your life. It feels very separate, like there's the planet and there's me, and we're not interconnected. And so the new series that we're launching is going, actually, as a brand, let's not tell the story ourselves. Let's find 12 amazing content creators who have audiences, who have passion points, who have stories around how their health is linked to the planet, and let's let them tell their story. Yeah. And, you know, it's a first of a project of its kind, really, for us, because we do a lot of telling people about what we do. This is quite different. This is we've created a platform for 12 people to shine a light on this, so that millions of people can start to see the link, because that will change things. The moment you see the link, it changes everything for you. It does. Because it's about me.
And I think we've touched on so many points here, particularly around how that intersection between health, nature and climate and storytelling can come together. Yeah. And one of the things which I'd love us to reflect on going forward out of this panel is not just about how negatively the environment can affect your health, but how positively it can. And we know that, for example, in Japan, people are now being prescribed time in nature, because the impact of tree bathing is so significant to them. And our environment isn't completely degraded. It isn't only bad for us. It is also wonderful for us, and we have the opportunity, if we have that privilege, to get access to it. We only have a few more minutes, but I just want to run down the whole panel and ask a final question. I've got a few options here, and don't worry, I'm not going to go back to questions you haven't thought about before. But I don't look after myself well enough, and I have to say that out loud, because there's a lot of people from Futerra in the audience in the background who see the amount of crap that I eat and that I don't exercise enough. So what I'd like to know is, what's the one thing you would like to see happen more to put together but basically give me some advice. What's the thing that you would like to see people put together more for their health and for the planet at the same time? Fiona?
I would like everybody to see that getting out into nature has such a positive impact on your mind. So it's not always about exercising. Just being in nature and breathing in the air and listening to the sounds is so good for our mental health. And we know we have a mental health epidemic, and yet people don't even spend an hour a week in nature. I really want to change that.
I'm going up to Central Park. Right. Dan?
I think I'd like to see more engagement with the next generation. I think that, you know, there's a lot of apathy in the world at the moment, at a political and to some degree environmental level. We sort of feel like, what more can we do? And so we can disengage. And I think that there is a new generation. I've got a 14-year-old son, and I think about, you know, how can you bring that education and inspire younger people to take change, because really that's going to be the generation that is going to be facing some of the biggest global challenges. So I would love to sort of see that focus shift.
Brilliant. Alice?
Well, just to go back a step, I did want to share that you said this thing about there are many positive stories, right? Spending time in nature, how it's good for us. And we got over 900 submissions for this call out for Planet Health Stories, which was amazing. And a lot of them were precisely on this. They were deeply personal, very moving stories of how nature had been healing. So I think that is really beautiful and fundamentally optimistic, and also allows you know, in storytelling, we think about this notion of the Trojan horse. How can we talk about climate but not have climate as the front-facing message, that it's in the background and that actually, you know, something more personal is at the foreground. I've forgotten your question, and I went on a massive tangent.
What's the one thing that you would like people to do to put nature and climate together?
Oh, well, I come back, again in this chapter of my life, to balance. I haven't always had balance, and so it's work-life balance, of course, but it's also balance in terms of mental health. I think our world is fundamentally out of balance in terms of our health, but also planetary health. So I think about that as a framework, and I would add, just in terms of the storytelling piece of getting stories out there, support. Storytelling has paid a lot of lip service. You'll go into many, many rooms at New York Climate Week, and people will say it makes such a big difference, but it needs to be funded and supported, and I'm really grateful to those who are, because it makes a really big difference. I'll leave you with one stat. There were 15,000 films submitted to Sundance this year. 30 documentaries were shown, and only 2 films got distribution. Only 2 out of some of the best storytelling in the world. So those stories need funding and then places to live, to get those stories out there, to create the awareness and the impact that we want to.
Brilliant, thank you. Aman?
I think from my perspective, it's 1.5 things, if I can cheat. One, I think, is talk to your brands. Talk to the brands you love and ask them questions. I think the awareness and engagement is not where we need it to be, just across the consumer base. Ask the companies, ask the brands, because that will show demand. We need the signal, bigger signal. And I think the other half point, I think, is when you go to the shelf, look at what you're picking up. Stay loyal, trust the safety and efficacy of what you love, but look at the packaging, look what it says, and just do a better job of connecting the dots.
That's such a great point. That choice. Charlie?
Similar to yours is bigger picture. I think the curious have, do, and will rule the world. They are the most informed, they're the most persuasive, they're the most fulfilled. So I think if everybody could sort of start a micro habit today of being even more curious about the decisions you make, the products you use, unless everybody here knows everything about Ozempic, that could be each of our micro step to research the Ozempic. What's it about? Single-use plastic, whatever it is. But every day, if you have a micro habit of, that's interesting, I want to know more, that'll turn into a regular habit, and that'll turn you into that type of person who is just endlessly curious about how our choices affect the planet.
Oh, curiosity is a great one. So good. I'm going to leave you with one last little story about my dad. Because we've spoken about storytelling and health, but we also need to talk about storytellers and who the right person is to give the message. So when my niece, my dad's granddaughter, got asthma, my dad, who's been driving around in builders' trucks and sitting outside people's houses his whole life, now as a retiree, goes around and knocks on the doors of trucks where it's idling, gets the builder and goes, "Oi, oi, that's bad for the kids." And so if I did that, it would probably cause some giant ruckus about some sort of Karen told me I had to turn the thing off. But my dad goes, "Oi, oi, it's bad for the kids." They turn it off. And then my dad, and the climate too, and then he goes off on his little walking stick. And that simple storytelling, he goes, you know, my granddaughter, she's got asthma, you stop that. It's very simple storytelling, and it's also the right storyteller for that audience. So you have been the right storytellers for this audience. Fiona, Dan, and Alison, Aman, and Charlie, thank you so much for joining this panel. I feel more healthy for having been here. Please join me in thanking them.